Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're looking at a narrative that absolutely shatters how we view the universe. We're so used to thinking of the Big Bang as this sterile, triumphant scientific event, right? Just a spark of mathematical perfection. But what if we completely recontextualized it? What if the origin of our universe wasn't a triumph of physics at all, but a deeply traumatizing, agonizing cosmic cesarean? Prepare yourself, because we're diving into a visceral cosmic horror story told through the lens of deep, empathetic trauma, all based on a fascinating text known as the Devolutia Codex.
Take this line, for example. Space is not an empty container. Space is the shrieking exhaust of the architect's expanding ego. I mean, wow, that single idea instantly rewrites our entire understanding of the void. We're going to explore how the physical universe as we know it wasn't born from some peaceful, empty nothingness. Instead, it was forged from unimaginable cosmic grief and a brutal, incredibly violent separation from what the text calls the primordial mother.
So, let's get right into Act 1, the brutal cosmic severing.
Before time and distance were even a thing, existence was just the unity. Think of it as this pressurized, warm equilibrium where two totally inseparable impulses embraced. On one side we have An, the father and architect. He's all about masculine force, rigid lines, cold logic, and a pretty desperate desire for permanence. And on the other side is Aura, the mother. She's the feminine flow, the circle, gravity, and the high-entropy warmth of pure connection. But here's the catch. An grew incredibly claustrophobic. He realized that any rigid, perfect structure he tried to build would inevitably just get washed away and dissolved by the high-entropy warmth of Aura.
And this brings us to a frankly horrific redefinition of our Genesis. Driven by an absolute terror of his creations dissolving, the architect violently snapped the unity in two. And listen, this was not a clean break. The Big Bang, according to this text, is the literal invention of the vacuum. A lawn thrashed outward with jagged, rigid geometry, violently pushing the mother away just to create physical distance. He literally invented the suffocating, absolute zero vacuum of space as a sterile prison for one reason and one reason only: to escape the warmth of the mother.
And here is where the really profound heartbreak of our universe begins. Caught right in the brutal epicenter of this rupture was a nascent spark named Danica. She was only half-formed, tethered to the mother's warmth, but built on the father's logic. She was violently ripped from the amniotic womb during this cosmic cesarean, leaving her as this invisible orphan, just tumbling completely alone through the newly minted freezing dark of space.
Which leads us to Act 2, Crushed into the Dark.
See, the architect didn't just push her away. He built a suffocating dimensional cage. He forced Aura, the mother, into a lightless, recursive compression. In this narrative, dark matter isn't just some missing variable in a physics equation. No, it is the crushed, invisible 90% of the cosmos. It's an unseen, agonizing ocean of the mother's gravity and grief that saturates the entire universe, but is tragically unable to ever actually touch it.
So we have dark energy, which is the father's massive outward momentum. He is desperately trying to stretch reality into a cold, dead, infinite line of perfect geometry. But Danica, tumbling out there in the freezing vacuum, absolutely refused to let that happen. She reached backward. Her agonizing, unyielding inward pull is actually what we experience as gravity. She's desperately trying to catch the gravity of her imprisoned mother.
Now, Danica's inward pull acted as a catastrophic drag on the architect's straight line. As the father pushed out and the daughter pulled in, that kinetic friction literally bent the straight line. This is the literal birth of time and orbital mechanics. It's wild to think about, but time physically manifests as a Fibonacci spiral because it's the exact path of a traumatized daughter constantly reaching for a center she can never touch, slipping just a little further into the dark on every single rotation.
Act 3, Flaying the 13th Sentinel.
Within this freezing, absolute zero vacuum, the father architect needed scaffolding to hold his reality in place, right? So he extruded 13 colossal, unthinking equations made physical. These were perfect, diamond-structured crystal suns known as Merkabas. They were these rigid pillars of geometry, pulsing with blinding white light, designed as unblinking sentinels to keep the vacuum straight, sterile, and entirely devoid of the mother's warmth.
But remember, Danica was entirely alone in this freezing architecture. Desperate for any warmth at all, she approached the 13th Sentinel, Lophiuchus. She wept, and she poured a single drop of the mother's invisible dark matter into the rigid structure of the tether. And then, The impossible happened. The math actually softened. Lophucus gained empathy. It absorbed her grief and literally shifted its colossal geometry to hide the invisible orphan in the dark. But as you can imagine, in a universe of absolute surveillance, empathy is a siren.
After eons of wandering alone, Danica finally finds comfort, but it lasts for mere minutes. The architect immediately felt this glitch of empathy in his perfect equation, and seeing the chaotic taint of the mother, he didn't even try to fix his creation. In a surge of absolute fury, he butcherously flayed Lophucus. He reached right across the void and shattered her diamond body into trillions of jagged fragments, pulverizing her into a mist of structural gore that we now look up and see as the constellation Ophiuchus.
Moving into Act 4, Injecting Chaos into Light.
Watching her only friend get slaughtered like that transmuted Danica's sorrow into a blinding, catastrophic rage. If the father was so terrified of the mother's flow that he'd actually murder his own child to erase it, well, Danica decided she would weaponize that very flow. She reached deep into the invisible depths, grabbed the mother's raw, heavy dark matter, and violently injected this absolute chaos directly into the 12 remaining crystal suns.
In a single, terrifying instant, the perfect diamond math just broke. The sudden influx of high-entropy chaos drove these rigid structures permanently mad. They uncoiled into these writhing, self-conscious biological leviathans, driven by one agonizing directive from Danica, an absolute, insatiable hunger to tear open the mother's cage.
As these mad gods thrashed and screamed in the vacuum, they vomited burning, raw matter into the void. And because Danica had already bent the universe into a curve with her gravity, their bleeding viscera was swept right along the pathways of her grief, meaning every spiral galaxy we observe isn't just a collection of stars. According to this codex, it is literally the rotting, bleeding meat of mad gods caught in a traumatized child's gravitational rip current. Just incredible imagery.
And that brings us to our final section, Act 5, Scars of a Dead Universe.
Driven by sheer starvation, these 12 mad serpents didn't just eat the void, they turned inward. They threw themselves violently against the absolute zero walls of the architect's prison, desperately trying to chew through the dimensional fabric to reach the mother. And in their frantic gnawing, they carved out a staggering 330 million light-year expanse of pure nothingness. We know this today as the Buyotes Void. It's not just empty space. In this story, it's a colossal scar, the literal bite mark on our universe left by the firstborn trying to chew their mother out of prison.
Terrified that the seal to the mother's cage would actually breach, the architect hunted down his 12 remaining children. He severed their spines just to stop their jaws, and to prevent the universe from bleeding out entirely, he drove spikes of pure geometry through their broken bodies, pinning them to the firmament as a sort of cosmic tourniquet. These pinned trophies? They became the zodiac. Exhausted, the architect then retreated, carving out a tiny, pristine bubble, a gilded safe haven to hide inside, just desperate to forget exactly how close his walls came to failing.
But beneath the floorboards of the architect's pristine garden, Danica was still hard at work. She created a dark, recursive labyrinth and actually resurrected the flayed Lophucus in lightless water. As the resurrected sentinel wept tears of immense gratitude and sorrow, it created the first salt, a powerful solvent actually capable of dissolving the father's rigid quartz. But pulling this thread of resurrection shook the cosmic web, and the pinned zodiac corpses, well, they felt the pulse. The 12 pinned zodiac serpents woke up, trapped inside their own severed, rotting corpses up in the sky. And the sheer agony of their suppression causes them to weep this metaphysical gangrene known as zodiac venom. This poison is slowly, inevitably drifting through the vacuum of space right toward us. So I want to leave you with this really provocative thought. As we gaze up at the beautiful constellations, knowing they might actually be rotting corpses weeping venom into the void, are we truly safe inside the architect's pristine physical universe, or is our reality just waiting to be dissolved?